Max, welcome to the second Leanpub launch video for the other half of coding, what they didn't teach you. It's really good to see you again. You've added over 200 pages or so to your book since we did our first launch video, and so I love doing these kind of multiple launch videos for books. I wish more authors would do it like you do. So yeah, I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about what you've added. I guess we could start with part 4, where you talk about skills in your game, Refactronica.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, I've completed the book now, so that's the big change. Um, and at one point, I was just gonna have like a bunch of little. This is, by the way, this is what I love about Leanpub, is that you can have one plan for your book, and then as you write it, you can go, oh, wait a minute, I actually need to change this. So originally, I was just going to lay out the theory, and then give just techniques, right? But then I realized there's some stuff that's like cross-cutting. It's not this isn't just applying a tool. This is like a deep skill that needs to be absorbed and internalized and used. So that's what the skills section is about. Yeah, I use Refactronica as kind of one of the examples in that part. And that it's kind of the first end of this kind of book ending of the part where I build up to puzzle solving as one of the principal skills in software development, or what I think of as one of the principal skills in software development.
And did you develop the game for the kind of chapters that you wrote in the book, or did the game exist independently of that?
The game existed independently, so I was trying to solve the problem of marketing. I was trying to sell refactoring courses, to get people into refactoring. And I guess I have, well, as the book indicates, I have a slightly different idea of what refactoring is than a lot of people, and in some regards, including even Martin Fowler. Um, so a friend of mine said, "Hey, I got this ad that was basically a game, and I was compelled to solve this puzzle, and it helped me realize the problem. And so why don't you do that?" So that's what I built Refactronica for, was to help people realize that if they're not working a certain way, they're not really refactoring or transformatively refactoring or uh or applying metamorphosis to their code, like not changing their code and transforming it over time. They're still doing some glorified version of rewriting if they're not able to, win that game.
Yeah, I was just playing it a little bit before we started recording, and I really like the idea of your book going from kind of theory to actual, like here's a game, play it. If you've understood what I've been talking about, or if you've been having trouble internalizing it, you'll find out right away whether you have or not, whether you understand the game. And I really like the way, if I understand it correctly, there's sort of like there's a set of inputs and a set of outputs, and there's a mechanism between those inputs and those outputs. And one form of the game is you've got to change the internal mechanism without changing any of the inputs or any of the outputs.
That's right. Any combination of inputs has to produce the exact same combination of outputs the entire time,
Right.
on the professional level
Right.
of difficulty. My
Yes.
kids like to play on Cowboy,
Right.
which is, I think, what a lot of people think of as TDD, where
Yeah.
you break it and you get a test that says, "Hey, you for these inputs, you got the wrong outputs now," right? That's, they like that, but you can't play the complicated, um, can't play the really complicated boards that way. Like, I dare anybody to go take one of the like hard or extreme boards and erase everything,
Hmm.
and then just start to rebuild and solve the problem
Hmm.
going off of feedback of the tasks. And
Yeah, it's really.
it's not a perfect mapping because there's not like names and stuff that you
Yeah.
get from tests. It kind of shows the point, right? That if
Yes.
you're on the professional level of difficulty, you must literally maintain exact um, parity of behavior for each step, or you lose.
And one of the things I really like about that is that you have to have an understanding of the way the whole thing works in order to be able to do that. As opposed to like the sort of like piece by piece, step by step, getting feedback, stuff like that. In order to know this change here is going to have this impact over there through all these intermediate steps. You kind of have to understand the whole thing, which is, I think, I mean, it's a way of thinking that I think comes naturally to some of us and doesn't come to others of us at all, at least in certain domains. Um,
Yeah. But on the other side, there are lemmas, right? So you can
right,
say, I know that I, regardless of the context, I know that I can always replace this structure with this structure, right?
right.
Or without knowing anything. And this is so funny. We're talking about this game. We don't have maybe you should put like a little video of yourself playing it or something. In the final product, nobody's got a clue what we're talking about. But like, you can route, you can safe. There's like a safe pattern for the reroutes, right? So you do need to understand the overall system to some extent. But what you really, really need to know is that these steps are safely transformative. You create that link of proof, right? It's like,
Right.
if I do a bypass here, I know it's going to be the same behavior as it was before the bypass. And then once I've got the bypass, I've got a new thing that has the original behavior. And so now I only need to make one more incremental change. I prove that that is transformative. And like, maybe I should do a video of myself like doing one of the extreme levels, right? So
Yeah, that would be cool. That would be cool. We
speed
can,
them up
yeah,
as much as other people are. I mean, anybody can make a mistake and like,
yeah,
I fail to rotate something or something like
yeah.
that.
No, that would be really cool. I might do one myself for this video too. Um, and so the next part that you've added is part 5, mechanisms.
Mhm.
And so I was wondering if you could take a moment to talk about that addition to the final
Yeah.
version.
So that's really about my idea of it's kind of the next layer more practical, right? So the skills are transitioning out of the theory and the belief structure and the ontology that drive it and into practice, but there's still a long kind of absorptive transformation. The mechanisms are like, here's a thing you can do, right? Here's a thing you can use. You can use um the language features of TypeScript to support transformative uh modification of your software, support metamorphosis in your software. You can use fancy refactoring tools like the stuff that JetBrains provides, or Eclipse has pretty good stuff. Mm, Visual Studio's built-in stuff is not very good, but that's why they have ReSharper. Um, you can use all of these different like individual techniques, and so it serves as a double kind of a double payload. Payload one is for, I hope, most of the readers, here's some practical things you can start doing today to help you develop those skills and to help you be a little more transformative. Um, but then payload 2 is to make it real, right? Like, is like, here is some practical stuff that really is i- i- not theoretical and not something that you're kind of like distant from. You have to keep your arm's length, or you have to instantiate an abstraction for this. This is an exact application of these principles and these skills, right?
Yeah, no, that's really great and a natural progression from the previous part. And the last part is context, which I
Mhm.
really like, where you talk about things like your mindset and your environment, which you have. I'm looking at it right now. You have a little footnote that says that you mean your environment, not your coding environment, which is how I think a lot of programmers would think, and you get that, which is why you do your funny footnote. But so, what do you mean by environment when you're talking about context there in the final part of the book?
Well, I mean, everything that governs what code you write, and that includes your, IDE
Right.
and your tech stack, but it also includes things going as far as um, how your team is set up. Right? So, like, I mean, I reference ready in there, and,
Right.
I can't claim that it's not because, I wanna promote another book I was part of writing, but also it's it's a real and important connection. Like, if you wanna make this if you want to approach coding the way I approach it, and you're already an expert at that way of approaching it, and you get dropped into an environment that's, like, high pressure and has executives who don't really understand software and has all of these forces that are against you, you can do it, right? I think one person said I'm like a giant killer or whatever when it comes to those kinds of environments. And that's great, if it's me and the giant. But um if you want to start learning to do this and you're in an environment that's completely hostile to anything that anyone could possibly construe as slowing down, which even though I don't believe this slows you down once you're good at it, I could see why people would say it does when they don't really understand it. If you're in that kind of environment, you're setting yourself up for failure. You're going to need to move the learning part of this into some other environment, like a GitHub repo that you maintain on your own time or something like that. You need to get
Mm.
the
Right.
toxicity away from the learning process because learning a hard skill is fragile. Imagine if if someone goes into a dojo. This is going to be a terrible example, but imagine if somebody goes into a dojo, right, and they want to learn, but they've got like this heckler bully that is allowed for some reason to go into the dojo and just shout at them and slap stuff out of their hand and constantly disrupt their effort to become an expert. It's not going to work the same way. I probably should have gone with something more like a parent who is overbearing and doesn't let them
Yeah.
practice at home or whatever. But you get the idea, right?
Yeah.
You need the right conditions to succeed.
Yeah, no, that actually that I can have a personal example. I studied traditional Chinese martial arts for a few years ago, in
Mhm.
Montreal, and very briefly, I'd done some taekwondo before, which is far more kind of a different form of training. And in this school, every class was for all the students, regardless of the level. So there was no like black belt class kind of, and then yellow belt class or something like that. Every class was all the students, and you lined up in rows. Front right was the most senior student, then the front row to the left was down the ranks, and then second row on the right was the next most senior student all the way down. And so if you're in the back left, you were the most junior student, which typically meant newest. And what the beginning of every class was a warm up. And the interesting thing about what that meant, and like one of the students would lead the warm up, one of the senior students. So you can imagine you've just shown up to in whatever physical condition you're in to your first class, and there's someone at the front who's like been doing it every day for like 15 years, who can do like 100 push-ups, on their thumbs or whatever, leading the workout. And occasionally someone would walk in from most people who walked in got it. They're like, of course, everyone understands that like I'm in the back left because I'm new. I'm not expected to be able to do as many push-ups as the person at the front or something like that. And you're just supposed to do as well as you can and push yourself as hard as you can and go home and work out more in between sessions. But occasionally someone would come in who wouldn't get it. They would think that basically they were being kind of insulted by the workout going on further than they could go, and that everyone was looking down on them. And so it's interesting, there's this sort of interesting thing about, like, assessing your environment that you're in, that is a very important skill to have as well, to see, like, no, this isn't a looking down on you, this is just a kind of high performing organization or something like that. And no one expects you to be as good as the best person on day one or something like that. But anyway, I just really like that idea of like that you introduced there. That environment is this whole thing. I've got security gates to go through to get into my office. There's hierarchy. There's, people who are ambitious who are maybe trying to take me down or who my position threatens, say if I'm brought in as a consultant or something like that.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's really great. And yeah, so well, I mean, in the interest of time, congratulations on finishing the book. It's just so great. And yeah, there's these three new parts that we've covered in this video, in addition to the parts that we covered in our first one. Um, I guess my last question for you would be, uh, if there's one thing that you hope that someone who reads this whole book comes away with, some like new superpower or something like that, how would you describe it?
It would be changing their if there's only one thing that they come away with, it would be changing your perspective so that, how you change code is the most important thing, and the state is takes a back seat. It's not to say that you don't care about the state of the code. It's to say that you care more about how you change it than what its current state is.
And one of the ways this is conveyed in your book is through your concept of transformation, if I understand it correctly.
Yeah.
So could you maybe talk a little? Let me give you one more chance to talk a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah. So I think that it's critical that we start developing software using patterns, strategies, techniques, whatever you want to call them, probably all of those things and more, that create continuity between one state and another. So on the design side, like when you're only changing structure and not changing behavior, that's it's pretty apparent, right? The behavior is the invariant that you're gonna not modify, and you're gonna make changes to the code, and every single change to the code that you make needs to be as close to 100% guaranteeing no changes to the behavior and uh and guaranteeing only the intended changes to the structure, right? Then when we switch over to the function, right, away from form and towards function, it gets a little squidgier, right? Because all changes to function intrinsically change design, because all we do is design. I think we talked about that in the last video, and certainly I talked about it in the book. So you can't say, well, I'm going to change function without changing design. That doesn't make sense. That's not a thing, right? So then it becomes about how do I make sure that I make just the change to function that I intended to. And there's things like TDD and stuff that help, but there's more to it. It's about TDD is like a framework that lives inside, right? But there's still a bunch of analysis and thinking about how to break things down that you should do um, in order to make the smallest changes possible. I think Uncle Bob, I referenced this too, right? I think Uncle Bob actually did some thinking in this area like 10 years ago, came up with the transformation priority premise, which, has the word transformation right in it, right? And it's about changing behavior in a transformative way. Now, he has slightly different um, goal, I think, right? He's trying to help people understand how to apply test-driven development in a disciplined way. But in so doing, he broke down all of what we do into these discrete transformative steps and said there's probably some more that he didn't list, but it still is a class of thing with like 13 variants that he found. So yeah, that's what I mean by being transformative is there is a clear relationship after a change to the code before the change,
Right.
and you know that you have only modified that which you intended to modify.
Well, it's a really clear concept, really clear to say, much more complex to grasp. And I love how your book comes in these stages and different categories of ways of engaging with the problem and how you develop through the course of it. It's called The Other Half of Coding, What They Didn't Teach You. I highly recommend it to anyone who's getting started in a career as a programmer or anyone who's along their way, particularly if you found yourself in like a really challenging new environment. Like we were just talking about environment there, this book, start at the beginning and make your way to the end. You obviously won't necessarily agree with everything, but you will have a sort of different understanding and a coherent one that makes a lot of sense and is very smart. So Max, thank you very much for taking the time to do this second launch video with us on the occasion of, completing your book, and best of luck finding an audience for it out there in the world.
Thank you.